Have you ever heard a story about a woman who gave up her dignity to stay close to a man she loved? Not because she was weak, not because she had no choice, because love asked her to, and she said yes before her mind caught up with her heart. I had a degree. I had a future. I had a grandmother who spent her whole life teaching me to never let anyone put me on my knees, and then I met him, and everything I thought I knew about myself, about pride, about what I would and would not do for love, all of it burned down. My life took a path I never imagined the day I made that decision. What happened in that house, what they did to me, what I built from the ashes. I still cannot believe it is my story. But it is. This is my life. And it started in a bookstore in Birmingham, Alabama, when a Korean man in an expensive suit walked through the door looking like the whole world had gone sideways on him. I looked up from my book. You're not in Atlanta. How did you know? Because nobody comes to Birmingham on purpose in a suit that expensive. His name was Yoon Tae Min. His phone was dead, his connection to Atlanta was 3 hours gone, and his business meeting was a memory. I showed him the next bus schedule and waited for him to leave. He didn't leave. 5 minutes turned into an hour. An hour turned into 5. He told me about a family that measured love and profit margins, and a father who called kindness a deficiency. I told him about a grandmother who spent 30 years making a wealthy family's beds and never once heard them say her last name. 30 years? And they never learned her name? She was Ruth. Never Mrs. Monroe, just Ruth. I shrugged, like it did not still burn. She raised their children. She cleaned their house. She held their babies when they cried at night. And when she retired, they gave her a card that said, "Thanks, Ruth," and a gift basket from a department store. That's the first honest thing you've said all afternoon. He stayed 2 weeks. I took him to Nana Ruth's grave on a Tuesday afternoon, and this Korean man in an Alabama cemetery bowed to a headstone, deep, respectful, the way you bow to someone who matters. She raised you, he said. That makes her important. I looked at him, standing over my grandmother's name carved in stone, and I thought, oh no, this one is going to cost me. I was right. 2 months later, I was standing in a maid's uniform in front of the Yoon estate in Seoul, and the woman who laughed in the bookstore was gone. Tae Min had called me 3 weeks after he left Birmingham. His voice was careful, the way people sound when they are about to ask you something they already know is wrong. I can't bring you here openly. My father would never allow it. But there's a position on the household staff. It's not what you deserve, Grace. I know that, but it keeps you close. I have a business degree from UAB. I graduated with honors. I know how to read a balance sheet, write a strategy proposal, and spot a bad deal from across a conference table. And here I was, weighing all of that against a man's voice on the phone telling me he loved me, but the only door he could open was the servant's entrance. Nana Ruth's voice in my head, clear as Sunday morning. Hold your head up, baby. They can make you bow. They can't make you small. I said yes, because love asks you to do things that dignity tells you not to, and because I made myself a promise standing in front of Nana Ruth's photo the night before I packed my bag. If I was going to walk into a house where they would not see me, I was going to see everything. Every conversation, every number, every secret whispered over tea by people who thought the woman pouring it was too invisible to matter. Nana Ruth never had that option. She served and she endured and she kept her head up and she walked away with nothing but her dignity. I intended to walk away with more than that. The estate was a compound. 4 brothers, their wives, the chairman, Mrs. Yoon, and a staff of 20. A kingdom with 1 king and everyone else bowing. Tae Min had handled the logistics, told the house manager he found a qualified maid through a staffing agency. The paperwork was clean. Hiring staff was routine in a house this size, and nobody questioned the youngest son doing something useful for once. Bok-soon met me at the staff entrance. She was 58, Korean, and had been cleaning this house for 20 years. She was the senior maid, the one who trained new staff, and she showed me the hallways, the kitchens, the schedule, wake at 5, prepare the study, serve breakfast, clean rooms, serve tea at meetings, disappear. 3 rules, she said, not unkindly. Don't look them in the eye. Don't speak unless spoken to. And don't expect them to remember you exist. I set Nana Ruth's photo on the nightstand in my staff quarters, her in her maid's uniform, 1972, standing in front of the Harrington house. I looked at her face every night. I know, Nana, I know, but I love him. What's your name? I asked Boksoon that first evening. She stopped walking, looked at me like I had spoken in a foreign language. Kim Boksoon, she said slowly. Nobody has asked me that in 15 years. They call me a Juma, or you there. I said her name every day after that. Good morning, Boksoon-si. Taimin's family had already chosen someone for him. Shin Yuna, daughter of old Korean money, Seoul National University, perfect pedigree. The families had an understanding. Nobody had told Yuna it was over. Nobody had told the Yoons it was never going to happen. That was the world I had walked into. My first full day taught me the shape of my invisibility. I served tea in the chairman's study while he discussed a land acquisition with Tai Hyun, the eldest. I refilled water glasses during a conference call about shipping routes. I stood in the corner of the dining room while Tai Jun, the second brother, complained about quarterly projections. They never lowered their voices. They never glanced my way. I was a lamp, a piece of furniture that happened to pour tea. I filed every word. Mrs. Yoon's frost came on the second day. I was arranging flowers in the sitting room. She walked in without looking at me, spoke to the air beside my head. Tell the new maid the lilies go on the left, and her posture is unacceptable. Staff should not be seen slouching. I was 3 feet away from her. She looked through me like glass. The chairman at least tested people. He saw you enough to measure you. Mrs. Yoon had perfected something worse. She had decided I did not exist. She corrected my bowing angle the next morning. Not to help, to remind me where the floor was. Tai Jun assigned me double shifts by the end of the first week. No explanation. Just a schedule change slipped under my door with twice the hours and the same silence where a reason should have been. I started documenting a cloud drive, encrypted, backed up to 3 locations. Every conversation I overheard, every name, every number, every deal discussed in front of the maid who did not exist. I kept my phone in my apron pocket. I kept my face blank, and I kept records that would make an auditor weep. They had no idea. They looked at me and saw the help. They did not see the woman building an archive of every secret in their house. After the house went dark, Taemin would come to my room. Those were the only hours that were real. He would hold me and I would hold him, and for a little while the uniform did not matter. I'm sorry, he would whisper. Not forever. I nodded. But Nana Ruth served 30 years of not forever. The weeks settled into a rhythm. Thai men taught me Korean after midnight, whispering vocabulary in the dark. I taught him how to make cornbread in the staff kitchen at 2 a.m. Flour on his sleeves, laughing too loud and catching himself, he sketched my face in a notebook he kept hidden in his desk drawer. I sewed a loose button on his jacket, and he held my hand against his chest, and neither of us moved for a long time. Every touch was stolen, every moment borrowed from a house that would burn us both if it knew. I started leaving business proposals on his desk, market expansion into Southeast Asian distribution, supply chain optimization for the Northern Corridor. I wrote them in 2 hours, the kind of work I used to do in my sleep at UAB. He found them, read them, presented them at family meetings as his own. Nobody questioned it. The youngest son was suddenly producing ideas, and the family was too busy being surprised to wonder where they came from. The family party came on a Friday night. 20 guests upstairs, champagne, the sound of expensive shoes on marble. I was sent to the wine cellar for a case of red. The stone stairs, the cool air, the rows of bottles in the half dark. He followed me down. We had 30 seconds between the wine racks. His mouth on mine, my back against the shelf, his hands on my face, my fingers gripping his jacket. Desperate, terrified, stolen. Footsteps creaked on the floor above us. We pulled apart like we were on fire. This was not the kiss that changed things. This was the kiss that proved how trapped we were. We could only love each other in basements. Bok soon figured it out within a month. The way I looked at him when he passed through the kitchen, the way his hand brushed mine when I handed him tea, and neither of us pulled away fast enough. She had been invisible in this house for 20 years. She knew what hidden love looked like because she knew what hiding looked like. She said nothing to anyone. She started covering for me. Diversions when someone came too close. Warnings when Tae-jun was on the move. She never asked for an explanation. She just helped. Two invisible women in the same house. Different races, different ages, different countries. Same invisibility. I mapped every camera in the estate. Angles, blind spots, rotation timers. I noted which hallways had coverage and which corners the security team had gotten lazy about. I documented it all on the cloud drive. Every entry dated, every location tagged. Tae-jun cornered me in the east hallway on a Wednesday. He stepped close, too close, his hand on the wall beside my head, his voice low enough that no one else would hear. "You're pretty for the help." I looked at him the way Nana Ruth taught me to look at men who mistake proximity for permission. "I need to get back to my duties, sir." He did not take it well. The retaliations came in waves. Bathroom cleaning added to my morning shift. Laundry detail during my only break. Polishing silver that was already polished. He never said why. He never had to. I documented everything, his harassment, his schedule manipulations, every date, every incident, every word I could remember. And then, cleaning his office on a Thursday afternoon, I overheard him on the phone arranging a transfer from the family company account to an offshore entity I had never heard of. I stood with my dust cloth and my blank face and my phone recording in my apron pocket. When I had enough, I sent an anonymous tip to the company's finance department. No name, no return address, just the numbers in the account and enough detail to make someone look twice. The invisible woman protecting a family that did not know she existed. The chairman's offshore documents came next. A late-night session in his study, papers spread across the desk. He did not close the door when I came in to refill his tea. Why would he? I was furniture. I photographed every page while he scribbled notes with his back to me, uploaded them to the cloud before I finished clearing the cups. Tae-hyun's affair I caught, a delivering room service to his private suite. The woman was not his wife. She was the wife of a business rival. I served them tea, and they did not lower their voices, and I filed every detail. The Korean Community Charity Gala was held at a hotel ballroom downtown. The Yoon family attended. I was brought along to serve. Hundreds of people, wealthy Korean families, business leaders, church elders. I moved through the crowd with a tray. I was the only black person in the room. An older Korean woman stopped me, looked me up and down like she was pricing furniture. "You must be so grateful to work for the Yoons. Such a generous family." I smiled. "Very grateful, ma'am." She turned to her friend, spoke in Korean, assuming I would not understand. She was right. I did not understand. Not yet. Bok soon did. She was 10 feet away, holding a tray of her own, and she heard every word. In the kitchen afterward, she translated. She said, "At least the Yoons give these people jobs. Better than having them on the streets." I nodded, opened my phone, filed it, date, time, and location, name of the woman, which Bok soon provided. The community was not just gossiping. They were building a wall around me, and I was mapping every brick. Mrs. Yoon arranged the dinner with Yuna on a Saturday. Formal, the family dressed up. Yuna arrived in a designer dress and a warm smile, and the house came alive in a way I had never seen. The family laughed. They fussed over her. "Yuna, ya, you look beautiful tonight." The chairman complimented her family. Mrs. Yoon seated her next to Tae-min. Their shoulders almost touched. I served the courses. I poured wine into Yuna's glass. Our eyes met for half a second. Hers were warm, open. She looked at me the way you look at a person, not a piece of furniture. "Thank you," she said. The only person at that table who did. I nodded, returned to the wall, stood with my hands clasped and my back straight, and watched the family perform love for a woman they had known for 2 hours while ignoring the woman who had held their house together for months. The warmth in that room was deafening. It was the warmth they had never given me. Not once, not for a single second. And Una was not cruel. That was the worst part. She was genuinely kind. She was being used as a weapon and she did not even know it. I could not hate her. I could only stand against the wall and watch the life that could have been mine if I had been born into the right family, the right country, the right skin. Taemin stared at his plate. He could not look at either of us. After dinner, Mrs. Yoon spoke to Taemin privately in the hallway. I was clearing plates 3 rooms away, but the house carried voices if you knew where to listen. Una comes from the right family. She understands our world. You know what your father expects. She did not mention me. She did not have to. I fumbled a glass, putting it on the tray. It did not break, but it clinked loudly enough to bring Mrs. Yoon's gaze to me for the first time in weeks. Her eyes, steady, even. You chose this. Nobody forced you here. Then she walked away. It was the cruelest thing anyone said to me in that house, because it was true. Late that night, Taemin in my room, his head on my chest, my fingers in his hair, the only peace either of us got. Then footsteps in the hallway. We froze. The door handle turned. 1 second. That was all we had. He rolled under the bed. I grabbed a cleaning cloth from the nightstand and dropped to my knees. The door opened. Taejun, late night room check. Just polishing the floor, sir? He stared at me, kneeling on the floor of my own room at midnight, cleaning nothing. His eyes narrowed. Then he turned and left. I sat on the bed shaking. Taemin crawled out from underneath. Neither of us spoke. The violence of the switch hung between us. Lovers to maid in one heartbeat. That was the cost of being loved in this house. Little Seo-yeon found me the next week, Tae-wook's daughter, 4 years old with eyes that saw what 30 adults refused to see. She started following me through the hallways, not out of curiosity, out of something simpler than that. She drew me pictures, stick figures, a tall brown figure and a small one, hearts floating between them. She slid them under my door when I was not looking. I kept them under my pillow. They were the only art in my room. She called me Auntie Grace, even though the family said do not talk to the staff. Auntie Grace, are you sad? She asked me one afternoon in the hallway. No, baby, I'm just tired. She tilted her head. When I'm tired, my mama holds me. Who holds you? I could not answer that. Not honestly, not without breaking something I was holding together with nothing but willpower and Nana Ruth's voice in my head. One morning, I was sick, fever, aching, barely standing. Seo-yeon appeared at my door with a blanket from her own bed, dragging it behind her like a cape. Auntie Grace, you feel bad? I wrapped the blanket around my shoulders and held this child's hand while the house full of adults went about their mourning without a single one of them noticing I could barely stand. A 4-year-old saw what no one else would. Taejun dropped the porcelain bowl at dinner on a Tuesday. Deliberate, his fingers opened and he let it fall. It shattered on the marble floor. White shards everywhere. He pointed at me. Clumsy maid, clean it up. I knelt. The shards bit into my palms. Blood on white porcelain. I picked up every piece while Taejun smirked and the family watched, and Taemin sat 3 feet away. I looked at him. Not begging, just looking, seeing him, asking without words the only question that mattered. You gonna be the man I see in you, or the man they made you? He looked away. I finished cleaning, every piece, blood smeared on the white marble like a signature nobody wanted to read. I stood, walked to the kitchen, washed my hands under cold water, watching the pink swirl down the drain, pressed a towel against the cuts, alone. Mrs. Yoon passed me in the hallway as I knelt to wipe the remaining blood from the marble. Her heels clicked on the floor in perfect rhythm. She did not slow down. She did not look down. She walked past my bleeding hands like they were part of the decor. That night, Taemin came to my door. I did not open it. I'm sorry, he said through the wood. I'm sorry, My grandmother bled in their kitchen for 30 years, I said, and her man never came to the door either. Don't be him. Silence. I heard him lean his forehead against the door. I heard him breathe. Then I heard him walk away. Days passed. 3 of them. I kept working. I kept documenting. I kept my face blank and my hands bandaged and my phone in my apron pocket. I served tea to the same people who had watched me bleed. None of them mentioned it. None of them asked about my hands. The porcelain had been replaced. The marble had been cleaned. The incident had been erased from the household memory like it had never happened. But my palms remembered, and my cloud drive remembered. Then he came back, not to my door this time, to my room with bandages. Real ones, not the cheap ones from the staff bathroom. He knelt in front of my chair, took my hands, unwrapped the old bandages gently, wincing at the cuts underneath. He cleaned them, applied ointment, wrapped them with new gauze, careful, slow, like my hands were the most important thing he had ever held. I love you, he said, his voice breaking on the last word. And I hate what I'm making you endure. I looked at him on his knees, wrapping my wounded hands, the same hands that bled on his family's porcelain while he sat in a chair and said nothing. Then stop hating yourself, I said, and start being someone who deserves what I'm giving you. He looked up at me. I saw the boy from the bookstore in there somewhere, the one who bowed at my grandmother's grave, the one who laughed like he had been holding it in his whole life. I also saw the man who looked away. Both of them were in that room, and I did not know yet which one would win. The chairman noticed. It started small. A family meeting on a Thursday morning where Taimin presented an expansion proposal for the Southeast Asian supply chain. Detailed, specific, the kind of work the chairman had never seen from his youngest son. He leaned back in his chair and studied Taimin with eyes that had been reading people for 40 years. Where did this come from? Taimin hesitated. 1 second. 2. I've been doing research. The chairman looked past him to the doorway where I stood adjusting a teacup on the tray. I did not look up. I did not flinch, but I felt his gaze like a hand on my shoulder. Research, the chairman repeated. He said the word like he was turning it over, looking for the seam. He did not ask again. But after the meeting, he stood at the window of his study for a long time. I brought his afternoon tea. He did not dismiss me. He did not speak to me. He watched me pour. He watched me set the cup on its saucer. He watched my hands, my bandaged hands. That evening, the chairman arranged a formal dinner. 30 guests, business partners, politicians, old money Korean families. The invitations went out the same afternoon. The staff scrambled. Boksoon found me in the kitchen, and the look on her face told me everything. He is testing someone, she said. I do not know who. I knew. The dinner was held in the great hall. Long table, white tablecloths, crystal glasses, candles reflected off marble floors that I had polished that morning on my hands and knees. The guests arrived in expensive cars. They carried themselves with the weight of people who had never been asked to kneel. I served. I moved between chairs with wine bottles and water pitchers. I was the only Black woman in the room. I was the only person in the room who was not supposed to be seen. The chairman sat at the head of the table. He talked and laughed and accepted compliments from men who owed him favors. He was performing. I had been in this house long enough to know when he was watching someone without looking at them, he was watching me. Halfway through the second course, he lifted his wine glass. Red wine, expensive, the color of dark blood. He held it over the edge of the table. His fingers opened. The glass hit the marble and shattered. Red wine spread across the white floor like a wound. 30 heads turned. The chairman looked at me. Clean it. Now. I moved toward the spill with a cloth from the serving station. He stopped me with one word. No. He gestured downward. On your hands and knees like this. 30 people watching, 30 faces turned toward me. The room went quiet. The kind of quiet that has weight to it, the kind that presses against your chest. I knelt. My knees hit the cold marble. The sound was small. The silence around it was enormous. I pressed my bare hands into the wine and scrubbed. The red seeped into the gauze on my palms immediately, warm and dark, soaking through the white bandages. The barely healed cuts from the porcelain opened again. I felt them split, one by one, like old promises breaking. Blood mixed with wine on white marble, pink and spreading, and I scrubbed harder because if I stopped, they would see my hands trembling. I could feel every eye in that room. 30 pairs. Some curious, some uncomfortable, most indifferent. The sound of my palms against wet marble was the only noise in a room that had been full of laughter 30 seconds ago. One guest shifted in his seat. He was older, silver-haired, and he looked away toward the window like something outside suddenly required his attention. The rest watched like they were watching a performance, entertainment between courses, something to mention over brandy later. "Did you see the chairman's maid? On her knees, blood on the floor? Quite a display." The chairman studied my face. He was looking for it, the defiance, the fire, the proof that I was more than I appeared. His eyes moved across my expression like fingers searching a wall for a crack. He found nothing. My face was blank, dead calm, a mask my grandmother had worn for 30 years in the Harrington house. Nana Ruth never taught it to me on purpose. I learned it the way you learn to breathe, by watching, by surviving, by understanding that the people who hold power over you want one thing more than your obedience. They want to see you break. The chairman nodded, turned back to his guests. "Just the help." He was wrong. Behind my grandmother's mask, behind the blank eyes and the steady hands, I was filing every detail, the date, the time, the 30 guests who watched a woman bleed on a marble floor and did nothing. His exact words, the angle of his chin when he said them, and the phone in my apron pocket had been recording since I walked into that room. Ty Min was at the table. He sat 6 chairs from the head next to a politician's wife who was laughing at something someone had said. His hand was wrapped around his wine glass. His knuckles were white, the stem of the glass bent under his grip. He did not stand. He did not speak. He did not look at me. The man I loved watched me scrub his father's wine off the floor with my bleeding hands, and he sat in his chair like it was bolted to the marble. He gripped that glass like it was the only thing keeping him in one piece, and maybe it was, but I was the one on my knees and he was the one in the chair, and the distance between those two positions was the entire problem of our love in one room. I thought of Nana Ruth. I thought of her on her knees in the Harrington kitchen with a brush in her hand and her dignity folded up and tucked somewhere they could not reach. She survived 30 years of this. She survived it by being better than every person who stood above her, and she did it without anyone ever knowing. I came from that woman. Her blood was in my veins, mixing with the wine on this marble floor. They would learn what that blood was worth. I finished. I stood. I carried the stained cloth to the kitchen. I washed the wine and blood off my hands. I photographed my palms under the fluorescent light. The cuts reopened, the gauze soaked through. I uploaded the photos to the cloud drive. Date, time, chairman, Yoon, 30 witnesses, wine test, public humiliation. Then I wrote a second anonymous tip about Tae-jun's embezzlement and sent it to the company's finance department. The invisible woman was still protecting this family. They just did not know it. That night, I locked my door. I sat on the edge of my bed. I took Nana Ruth's photo from the nightstand and held it in my bloody hands. And I broke. For the first time since I walked into this house, since I put on that uniform, since I knelt on marble and cleaned porcelain and served tea to people who looked through me, I cried. Not quietly. Not the kind of crying you can swallow. The kind that comes from somewhere below your ribs and takes everything with it on the way out. I said I would never do this, I whispered to her face. I swore, Nana. I swore I would never kneel in another rich family's house. And here I am, bleeding for people who do not know my last name. I pressed the photo against my chest and felt the weight of 2 generations of women on their knees in houses that were never theirs. You must be so disappointed in me. But she would not have been. I knew that. Nana Ruth would have understood. She did it for 30 years. She did it because love asks you to do things dignity tells you not to. She did it because sometimes the only way through is down on your knees, but she never got out. She died in that same town, in her small house, with 30 years of someone else's silver polish under her fingernails and nobody from the Harrington family at her funeral. They sent flowers. They spelled her name wrong on the card. I was not going to be her. I loved her. I carried her, but I was not going to be her ending. I wiped my face. I set the photo down. I opened my phone. The cloud drive loaded, file after file after file. Every secret, every receipt, every recording, every photograph, I added tonight. The wine test, the chairman's voice saying, "Just the help." my stained palms. 30 witnesses and not one of them moved. I closed the phone, looked at Nana Ruth. They never learned your name, I told her, but they are going to learn mine. 2 days later, I sat in the garden, the stone bench in the east corner, the one spot on the entire estate where no camera reached. I had mapped every angle months ago, marking the blind spots on my cloud drive like a woman charting escape routes. Maybe that is exactly what I was doing. The afternoon light was warm. My hands ached. The cuts were closing again, but slowly, like even my body was tired of healing things. This house kept breaking. I sat with my bandaged hands in my lap and stared at the roses and thought about nothing and everything in Birmingham. Taemin found me. He did not speak at first. He sat beside me on the bench, and for a long time we were just two people breathing the same air. The garden was quiet. No staff passing, no cameras recording, just the sound of wind through the hedge and the distant noise of a house that ran on the labor of people it refused to see. Then he took my hand, the bandaged one, gently, like it was made of something that could shatter. He lifted it to his mouth and pressed his lips against the gauze where the cuts were. I flinched, not from pain, from the tenderness. Nobody in this house had touched me with tenderness in so long that my body had forgotten what it felt like. He looked at me, not the way he looked at me in stolen moments, rushed and terrified and guilty, glancing at doors and listening for footsteps. He looked at me, full eye contact, in broad daylight, where anyone walking the garden path could see. I watched you bleed on that floor, he said, and I sat in my chair. I'm done sitting in chairs while you bleed. I stared at him, searching his face for the man who looked away, searching for the coward. If someone see, then they see. He kissed me. Not the desperate stolen seconds kiss from the wine cellar. Not 30 seconds between bottles with our hearts hammering and footsteps above. This was slow, deliberate. His hands on my face, his thumbs against my jaw, tilting my chin up, my bandaged hands gripping the front of his shirt, pulling him closer instead of pushing him away. The sun was on both of us. The garden was open. Anyone could have walked that path. Anyone could have turned the corner and seen the youngest Yoon son kissing the maid in broad daylight with both hands on her face like she was the only real thing in his world. He did not care, and for the first time, neither did I. This was the kiss that changed everything. Not because it was romantic, though it was, because it was defiant. Every other moment we had shared was stolen. Basements, locked rooms, midnight. This was daylight. This was a man choosing a woman where it was dangerous to choose her. For the first time, he was not hiding. We pulled apart. I looked at him. My hands were still twisted in the front of his shirt, and I could feel his heartbeat through the fabric, fast and steady. Don't make me believe you, I said, and then sit in that chair again. I won't. I wanted to believe him. I wanted it the way you want air when you have been underwater too long. But I had watched him look away twice now. The porcelain, the wine. 2 times he chose the chair over me. Words are not actions. Words are easy. The chair is easy. Getting up from the chair is the hard part. The next morning, I was cleaning the hallway outside the family rooms. My hands ached. The gauze needed change. I was moving on muscle memory, cloth in one hand, spray bottle in the other, the routine so automatic that my body could do it while my mind was still in the garden. Seo Yeon appeared at the end of the hallway. She was holding something in both hands, walking toward me with the serious concentration of a 4-year-old on a mission. She stopped in front of me and held up a Band-Aid, child size, cartoon characters on it, pink and small enough to cover almost nothing. Honey Grace, your hands are hurt. She peeled the backing off the tiny Band-Aid with her little fingers and placed it on my palm. It covered a fraction of the wound. It covered almost nothing, but my eyes filled and I could not stop them. Thank you, baby. She looked up at me. 4 years old, brown eyes full of something that 30 adults at a dinner party could not manage. Honey Grace, why do they make you clean when you're hurt? I knelt to her level, eye to eye. This child who followed me through hallways and drew me pictures and brought me blankets when I was sick. This child who saw me when a room full of grown people looked right through me. Because they don't see me, sweetheart. Seo Yan frowned, her small face scrunched with the effort of processing something that should not have to make sense to a 4-year-old. I see you. 3 words. From a child who had not yet learned that some people were supposed to be invisible. I see you. The simplest truth in that entire house, spoken by the smallest person in it. I pulled her into a hug and held her, and she held me back. And for a moment, I was not the maid, and she was not the granddaughter of the man who put me on my knees. We were just 2 people who saw each other. Her small arms around my neck, her cheek against mine, the Band-Aid on my palm, pink and ridiculous and covering nothing, was the most valuable thing anyone had given me in months. The chairman's 70th birthday gala was the following week. I organized it, every detail. The catering, the seating arrangements, the flowers, the music, the guest list coordination. I worked with the official event planner, feeding her ideas, solving problems before she knew they existed, making phone calls she did not know I made. The gala was flawless. 300 guests. The chairman received compliments all evening. The planner received a bonus. I mopped the entryway after the last guest left. At the family meeting the next day, something changed. Taimin sat at the long table with his brothers and his father, and stood against the wall with a tea tray. The chairman was discussing the quarterly numbers. Tae-hyun presented his report. Tae-jun shifted money around on paper the way he always did. Then the chairman mentioned a deal with a shipping company that I knew from cleaning his study was a front for moving money offshore. Taemin spoke. That partnership is a liability, he said. His voice was steady, quiet, but clear enough that every head at the table turned. The chairman's eyes narrowed. Excuse me? The shipping company? Their financials do not hold up under scrutiny. If anyone looks closely, it exposes the family to risk. Silence. Tae-hyun stared at his youngest brother. Tae-jun leaned back in his chair with a smile that had no warmth in it. The chairman set down his pen. And since when do you understand financial risk? Since I started paying attention. The words hung in the air. Taemin did not look at me. He did not need to. But I saw his hands under the table. They were not gripping anything. They were steady. The chairman studied his youngest son the way he had studied me at the dinner, looking for the crack, looking for the source. He did not find it in Taiman's face, but he found something worse. Defiance. The soft son, the one he called a liability, was pushing back in front of his brothers at the family table. I watched the chairman's jaw tighten. I watched him file this moment the same way I filed moments, carefully, precisely, for future use. He did not respond to Taemin's objection. He moved on to the next agenda item as if it had not happened. But his eyes stayed on Taemin for the rest of the meeting, measuring, calculating, deciding. I stood against the wall and held the tea tray and felt something shift beneath the surface of that house. Taemin had stood up. Not for me, not yet, not directly, but he had stood up, and the chairman had noticed. And in a house where the patriarch controlled everything, being noticed for defiance was the most dangerous thing his youngest son could do. The chairman moved fast, faster than I expected. 3 days after Taemin pushed back at the family meeting, I carried a tea tray into the chairman's private study. Tae-hyun was already there, door half closed. Neither of them looked up when I entered. Why would they? I was furniture. I set the cups, poured, kept my eyes down and my ears wide open. He challenged me in front of his brothers. The chairman's voice was flat, surgical. The soft one thinks he has teeth now. Tae-hyun leaned forward. Then we pulled them. They talked about the jade seal like it was a chess piece. 200 years old symbol of Yoon's succession. Tae-hyun would have his tech contacts edit the security footage. A figure matching Taemin's build entering the vault at 2 a.m. Evidence planted in his room. When the family sees the footage, Tae-hyun said, no one will question it. The chairman nodded. Let him see what strength actually costs. I finished pouring, bowed, left the room with the tray balanced on hands that had gone cold. In the kitchen, I gripped the counter until my knuckles ached. His own father and his own brother discussing his destruction like a quarterly earnings adjustment. I found Boksoon in the laundry room that evening, closed the door. I need the original security footage before they edit it. She did not ask why. The backup server, she said. Basement utility room behind the electrical panel. I have been cleaning around those cables for 20 years. I wrote step-by-step instructions on paper. Plug in the USB, navigate to the security archive, copy the last 30 days. Eject, hide the drive. Boksoon read it twice, folded it into her apron. How long do I have? Days, maybe less. She nodded once and went back to folding sheets. 2 tracks after that. Boksoon worked on the server copy in stolen moments during the late shift. Meanwhile, Taehyun's people did their work. The footage was edited. The jade seal vanished from its display case. A velvet pouch appeared in Taemin's closet, tucked behind his winter coats, where a search would find it quickly. The chairman called the family meeting on a Tuesday morning. His voice through the intercom was ice. The jade seal is missing. Everyone in the main hall, now. I stood against the wall with a fresh tea tray. My hands were steady. My stomach was not. The screen lit up. Security footage. Time stamped 2:14 in the morning. A figure in dark clothes entering the vault. The build, the height, the shoulder. It looked exactly like Taemin, because it was supposed to. Taehyun spoke first. Always knew he was desperate, selling off family legacy to fund his little projects. Taejun piled on. Check his accounts. He has been bleeding money for months. Probably already found a buyer. The chairman stood at the head of the table. Return the seal, or leave this family in disgrace. Those are your options. Taemin's face was white. He stared at the screen, at the brothers burying him with rehearsed outrage. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. He looked at me. Our eyes locked across the room. I saw the confusion, the betrayal, the understanding that this was a blade his own father had sharpened. And I knew I could not save him the way I planned. Boksoon was not done. The original footage was still transferring to a USB drive in a basement utility room. 60, maybe 70%. I had no proof, not yet, but they were going to strip him right here, right now. His name, his place, his family, everything. Nana Ruth's voice in my head, clear as Sunday morning. Sometimes the only move you got left is the one that costs you everything. I set down the tea tray. The porcelain clinked against the side table. Every head turned. The maid was moving out of position. The furniture was walking toward the center of the room. I took it. Silence. The kind that has weight. I took the jade seal. I was going to sell it. He had nothing to do with it. I looked at Taemin, held his eyes, tried to put everything into that look. I got you. I got you. Stay quiet and let me do this. His lips parted. I watched him understand, and I watched something in him break. The family turned to the chairman. He studied me for a long moment, then his jaw unclenched. Something like satisfaction settled across his face. Of course, the maid stole it. Of course she did. Nobody questioned it. Not Taehyun, who knew the truth. Not Taejun, who had never needed a reason to believe the worst about me. Not Mrs. Yoon, sitting in her chair with her hands folded, her face a mask of unsurprise. A maid stealing from the family confirmed everything they had always believed about people like me. The chairman made a phone call. 20 minutes later, the jade seal was found in a storage closet. Misplaced. Crisis resolved. Except for me. 2 guards came to my room. They opened my drawers, pulled out my clothes, tossed my things onto the floor like they were clearing a crime scene. One of them swept his arm across my nightstand. Nana Ruth's photo hit the floor, face down. I did not pick it up. If I touched that photograph in front of these men, something inside me would crack open and never close again. A boot came down on something by the bed. The soft crunch of paper. Seo Yeon's drawing. 2 stick figures and hearts. The one I kept under my pillow. A guard's boot print across our faces. In the chaos of the search, I found Boksoon in the hallway. 15 seconds, that is all we had. I pressed the folded paper into her palm. The cloud drive login, my username, my password, everything I had documented for 3 years, accessible from any device, anywhere in the world. The note for Mrs. Yoon is inside, I whispered. Hide the USB in her pillowcase when it is done. She will know what to do. Boksoon gripped my hand. I gripped hers back. Your phone number, she said. I said it once. She repeated it. I nodded. She repeated it again under her breath, burning it into memory. They escorted me down the main hallway, through the front entrance, across the courtyard. I carried nothing. At the gate, Boksoon appeared. She was holding my coat. You will need this, she said, loud enough for the guards. She helped me into it, and I felt her hand slip into the pocket. A folded piece of paper, her note. The gate opened. I stepped through. Behind me, I heard it. Small feet running on stone, then the voice that broke me more than anything that family had ever done. Auntie Grace, do not go. Please, Auntie Grace. Seo yawned, 4 years old and screaming like the world was ending because for her, it was. Minji caught her daughter, scooped her up. Seo Yeon fought, reaching for me over her mother's shoulder, sobbing so hard her small body shook. I saw Minji's face over her daughter's head. Something moved behind her eyes, not pity. Something harder than that. Something that looked like the beginning of a reckoning. And above it all, second floor, the window at the end of the east hallway, Tae-min standing behind the glass, his hand pressed flat against it, his mouth closed, his eyes on me. He did not come downstairs. He did not open the door. He did not say a single word. Hand on glass, watching the woman who took a blade meant for him walk away with nothing. I did not look back. Nana Ruth did not cry when they fired her after 30 years for silverware she never touched. Monroe women do not look back. I had Boksoon's number in my memory, the cloud drive logging in her hands. 3 years of every lie, every crime, every secret that family thought was buried. They threw out the maid. They kept the woman who knew everything, and they did not even know the difference. Nana Ruth's house smelled like dust and lavender and 30 years of a woman who never got to rest. I dropped my bag at the door, stood in the hallway, let the quiet settle around me like a coat I had forgotten how to wear. No bells, no schedules, no one calling my name in a language that was never supposed to be mine. I pulled Boksoon's note from my coat pocket. Her handwriting was shaky, the letters pressed hard into the paper. They think they won. Finish it. I folded it back into my pocket and walked through every room. Kitchen, where Nana Ruth taught me to roll biscuits. Living room, where she watched Wheel of Fortune every night at 7. Bedroom, where she kept her maid's uniform pressed and hanging even after the Harringtons let her go. I stood in front of that uniform for a long time. Then I turned around, went to the kitchen table, and opened my laptop. Nana Ruth left me this house. She left me the inheritance from 50 years of saving what little they paid her. And she left me a promise I made at her funeral, that I would turn this house into something that honored every woman who was ever called the help and was actually the foundation. I filed the nonprofit paperwork that week, the Ruth Monroe Community Center, job training, legal rights, financial literacy for domestic workers, seed money from Nana Ruth's inheritance. The house was the building. I was the staff. And every night I opened my cloud drive and waited for Boksoon's signal. The first call came on a Tuesday. The boy has no ideas, Boksoon whispered into the phone. I could hear water running. She was calling from the kitchen, the only place with enough noise to cover her voice. Family meeting yesterday. Chairman asked for proposals. Taemin sat there with an empty folder. The chairman said, without even a maid to prop him up, he is nothing. I closed my eyes, felt nothing, then felt everything. And the events? Disaster? The official planner cannot handle it alone. She never could. The catering for the chairman's business dinner was wrong. Wrong menu, wrong wines, wrong seating chart. The chairman was furious. I had organized that dinner for 3 years. Every course, every placement card, every wine pairing. They never knew. Now they knew. What about Seo Yeon? Boksoon went quiet. The water ran. She stopped eating. She stopped drawing. Every morning she asked Minji, "Where is Auntie Grace? When is she coming back?" Minji does not know what to say. My chest tightened. I pressed my palm flat against the kitchen table. 4 years old. She saw me when 30 adults refused to, and now she was grieving a maid nobody thought mattered. The doctor came yesterday, Boksoon continued. He told Tai-wook and Minji that the child is experiencing grief. They were confused. Grief? For a maid? She is not grieving a maid, I said. She is grieving the only person who saw her too. Silence on the line. How was the copy? Done 100%, but I need help reading the files, the folders, the labels. I cleaned around those machines for 20 years, but I do not know how to sort what is on them. Minji, I said. What? Minji is asking questions. I saw it in her face at the gate. Let her find you. Minji found Boksoon in the laundry room 3 days later. Boksoon told me everything on our next call. Minji had been asking the staff quietly who really organized the events, who left the business proposals on Taiman's desk, who made the anonymous tips to the finance department. One by one, the answers pointed the same direction, toward a maid's room on the 3rd floor that nobody was allowed to clean. Minji came to Boksoon with her daughter's drawings crumpled in her hand. Tell me everything. So Boksoon told her, not the evidence, not the cloud drive, just the truth, that Grace Monroe held the palace together from the shadows, that she bled on the dining room floor while the family ate, that she took the blame for a crime she did not commit to protect the man she loved, and that the man she loved stood at a window and watched her walk away. Minji sat in the laundry room for a long time after Boksoon finished. Then she said, "Show me the files." Minji was younger, sharper with technology. She helped Boksoon navigate the copied hard drive, sorted the folders, labeled the evidence, original security footage here, financial records here, photographs here, recordings here. Boksoon uploaded the original security footage to my cloud drive using the login I had pressed into her palm the day they threw me out. Then she assembled the USB, everything. The footage showing Tae-hyun entering the vault, the chairman watching from the hallway, Tae-jun's embezzlement records going back 3 years, the chairman's offshore account documents I had photographed in his study, the harassment records, the affair evidence, the chairman's recorded voice from the night of the wine test, and my note, the one I had written for Mrs. Yoon before they escorted me through the gate. Boksoon tucked the USB into Mrs. Yoon's pillowcase on a Thursday afternoon while changing the linens. 20 years of invisibility turned into one act of precision. "It is done," she told me that night. "Then we move next week," I said. "I send the evidence the same day she finds it. Parallel strikes. They will not know which direction the fire is coming from." Boksoon paused. "Grace, be careful." I was careful for 3 years. Now I am being precise. Taemin could not sleep. He had not slept properly since the gate, since he pressed his hand against the glass and watched the only woman who ever saw him walk away without looking back. The palace was quieter now. Wrong, quiet, not peaceful. Empty, like a body still breathing after the heart stops. He walked the halls at 2 a.m, past the dining room where she had scrubbed wine off the floor with her bare hands, past the kitchen where she taught him to make cornbread at midnight, past the sitting room where his mother had spoken about her in the 3rd person while she stood 3 feet away. He stopped at her door. It was open. Boksoon had refused to clean the room. Nobody had touched it. Taemin stepped inside. The room was bare, stripped. The drawers pulled out during the search, her few clothes still scattered on the floor where the guards had thrown them. In the corner, face down on the cold tile, Nana Ruth's photograph. He picked it up. A black woman in a maid's uniform, 1972, standing in front of a house that was never hers. Her face was calm, dignified. The same mask Grace wore the night his father poured wine on the floor. Beside it, half crumpled, half crushed, Seoyeon's drawing, 2 stick figures, a tall brown one and a small one, with hearts floating above them. Across the middle, a boot print, a guard's boot print, pressed into the paper during the search, stamped across their faces. A child's love, stepped on by a grown man's indifference. Taemin held the photograph in one hand and the drawing in the other. He sat on the bare mattress in the room where she had lived for 3 years. The room she came to every night after serving his family on her knees. He understood. Not in the way he had understood before, with guilt that came and went like weather. He understood the way a man understands when the floor drops out and there is nothing left to stand on. She had carried Nana Ruth's photograph across the ocean, had set it on this nightstand every night as a reminder of the woman who bled in someone else's kitchen for 30 years. And then Grace had done the same thing for him in his family's house, and he had sat in a chair and watched. He folded the drawing carefully, slid both into his jacket pocket. Then he stood up and started living differently. He cooked his own breakfast the next morning, burned the rice, burned the eggs, stood in the kitchen scraping carbon off a pan while the staff stared at him like he had lost his mind. He rode a bus for the first time in his life, stood in line, paid with coins he had to count 3 times, sat between strangers who did not know his family's name and did not care. He walked Seoul without a driver, bought coffee from a street vendor, ate it standing on a corner, watched people move through the city, ordinary people who cooked their own food and rode their own buses, and learned the names of the person who cleaned their building. He called Una on a Wednesday evening, met her at the cafe where their families had first introduced them. She arrived the way she always did, graceful, kind, composed. "There is someone else," Taemin said. "There has always been someone else." Una studied him, not with surprise, with something closer to relief. "The maid," she said. He flinched. "I knew," she said quietly. "I think I always knew. The way you looked at her when you thought no one was watching." She picked up her bag, stood. "I hope she is worth what you are about to lose." "She is worth more than what I already lost?" Una left the cafe. She did not look back either. She had never been the enemy. The system that seated her at his family's table and made Grace pour the wine was the enemy. Una was just a kind woman who deserved a man who chose her first, and Taemin was not that man. He sold his watch the next day. The Patek Philippe his father gave him for his 30th birthday. $27,000 in a pawn shop in Gangnam. He bought a one-way plane ticket to Birmingham, Alabama. He packed one bag, left his room, walked through the courtyard, past the marble entryway, past the gate where they had escorted Grace through with nothing. He walked through the same gate, one bag, no driver, no family name to catch him. The palace shrank behind him and he did not look back. I sent the evidence on a Monday morning. 3 emails, 3 years of documentation deployed in 11 minutes. Tae-Jun's embezzlement records went to the company board of directors. Account numbers, transaction dates, shell company names, 3 years of stealing from his own family's company, documented with the precision of a woman who had a business degree and access to every room in the house. The chairman's offshore accounts went to a financial journalist at the Korea Economic Daily. Photographs of documents he left on his desk during late-night sessions because the maid was just furniture. The original security footage went to the Yoon family's lawyer. The real footage, unedited, showing Tae-Hyun entering the vault at 2:14 in the morning and the chairman standing in the hallway, watching, not stopping his eldest son, watching him frame his youngest. I closed my laptop, sat at Nana Ruth's kitchen table, looked at my phone. The evidence was in the air now. 3 bombs falling simultaneously, and not one of them could be called back. Mrs. Yoon changed her pillowcase every Thursday. She pulled the old case free and felt something hard against her fingers. A USB drive, small, black, unremarkable, and a folded note, handwritten, tucked beneath it. She opened the note. "Mrs. Yoon, I left this for you because I think you are the only one in that house who knows what it feels like to be invisible. Do what Nana Ruth never could. Use it." She read it twice, 3 times, held it in both hands the way you hold something that might cut you. Then she opened her laptop and plugged in the USB drive. The first file was the wine test. Date, October 15th. Location, formal dining room. Guests, 30. Chairman Yoon deliberately spills wine on marble floor. Orders maid Grace Monroe to clean on hands and knees. Duration, 4 minutes, 12 seconds. Photographs of bloodstained palms attached. Porcelain cuts from previous incident reopened during scrubbing. The second file was the porcelain incident. Date, September 28th. Yoon Tae-Jun deliberately drops porcelain bowl at dinner. Maid Grace Monroe ordered to clean shards on hands and knees. Cuts to both palms. Blood on white porcelain. Yoon Tae-min present, seated 3 feet away. Did not intervene. Photograph of bloody floor cloth attached. Third file, Tae-Jun's harassment records. Dates spanning 2 years. Physical intimidation in hallways. retaliatory shift assignments after rejected advance, documented with incident numbers, locations, witnesses. Fourth file, the chairman's offshore accounts, photographs of physical documents, routing numbers, account balances, transfer dates, money moved from the company to personal accounts in Singapore and the Cayman Islands. Fifth file, the frame-up conspiracy, original security footage showing Tae-hyun entering the vault, the chairman in the hallway, edited footage comparison. Grace Monroe confessed to protect Yoon Tae-min from being framed by his own father and brother. And then the recording. Mrs. Yoon pressed play. The chairman's voice filled the room, clear, unmistakable, recorded on the night of the wine test while he spoke to Tae-hyun in the study afterward. She is just the help. Who is going to believe a black maid? She can document whatever she wants. Nobody listens to the woman who cleans the floor. Mrs. Yoon sat at her desk. She played it again. She is just the help. Again. Who is going to believe a black maid? She closed the laptop, put both hands flat on the desk, the same hands she had folded in her lap at every family meeting for 35 years. The same hands that never reached down to help Grace up from the floor. She thought about March 15th, walking past Grace on her knees, scrubbing blood off marble, her heels clicking in perfect rhythm. She did not stop. She did not look down. She thought about October 15th, sitting at the dinner table while a woman scrubbed wine and blood off the floor with her bare hands. She lifted her wine glass and drank. She thought about the dinner, seating a kind woman next to her son as a weapon while Grace poured the wine. She told Grace afterward, "You chose this. Nobody forced you here." She thought about speaking in the third person. "Tell the maid to bring fresh towels," while the maid stood 3 feet away. 35 years. She had spent 35 years perfecting the art of looking away. And the woman she looked away from had documented every moment she turned her head. Mrs. Yoon picked up her phone and made the first real decision of her 35-year marriage. Minji came to her within the hour. She stood in the doorway of Mrs. Yoon's private sitting room. "I know about Grace. Whatever you are planning, I am with you." Mrs. Yoon looked at her daughter-in-law, the woman whose 4-year-old had screamed at the gate for a maid nobody valued. "I am calling a family meeting," Mrs. Yoon said. "The first one I have ever called." "Good. It will destroy this family." Minji's jaw tightened. This family destroyed itself the day they made that woman bleed on the dining room floor and kept eating. The family assembled on a Sunday evening. The formal dining room, the long mahogany table, Chairman Yoon at the head, Tae-hyun to his right, posture perfect, face composed, Tae-jun across from him, phone on the table, Tae-wook beside Minji, confused by the summons. One chair was empty, Tae-min's chair. Mrs. Yoon stood at the far end of the table, behind her the large screen they used for business presentations. She had never stood at this end before. This was the chairman's end, the power end. "Sit down," she said. The chairman raised an eyebrow. In 35 years, she had never told him to sit. "What is this about?" he asked. "Sit down." He sat. Mrs. Yoon turned on the screen. The original security footage filled the wall. Timestamp, 2:14 in the morning. The vault corridor. A figure entering the vault. Not Tae-min, Tae-hyun, his face clear in the infrared, his hand on the vault handle, his body entering and in the hallway, just visible at the edge of frame, the chairman, standing, watching, not stopping his eldest son, watching him frame his youngest. Tae-hyun's face went white. "Where did you get that?" Mrs. Yoon did not answer. She pressed a button. The screen changed. Tae-jun's embezzlement records, 3 years, account numbers, transaction dates, shell companies, millions redirected from the family corporation to personal accounts, every number documented, every transfer traced. "That is not," Tae-jun started. Mrs. Yoon pressed again. "The chairman's offshore accounts, the Singapore, Cayman Islands, routing numbers, balances, the patriarch stealing from his own empire." The chairman's face did not change. He had been hiding too long to show surprise, but his hand on the table curled into a fist. Then Mrs. Yoon played the recording. the chairman's own voice filling the dining room where Grace had once served tea. "She is just the help. Who is going to believe a black maid?" The room went still. Mrs. Yoon let the silence hold, let his words hang in the air where he could not take them back. Then she spoke. "On September 28th, Tae-jun dropped a porcelain bowl in this room. Grace Monroe knelt on this floor and picked up the shards with her bare hands. The porcelain cut her palms. She bled on the marble. I walked past her without slowing down. I did not ask if she was hurt." She looked at the table, at each face. "On October 15th, you poured wine on this floor and ordered her to clean it on her hands and knees in front of 30 guests. Her cuts reopened, blood mixed with wine on the marble. I sat at this table and lifted my glass." Her voice was steady, the steadiest it had been in 35 years. "I seated Shin Yuna at this table and made Grace pour the wine. I told Grace, you chose this. Nobody forced you here." I spoke about her in the third person while she stood 3 feet away. I corrected her posture and her bowing angle, not to teach her, to remind her that she was beneath me. She paused, looked at her own hands. "I am not innocent. I need you to hear that. I did what this house trained me to do. I made another woman invisible so I could survive. I walked past every humiliation. I closed my eyes to every cruelty. A 4-year-old child saw Grace Monroe. I did not." She straightened. "But I am done. I am done being decorative. I am done surviving by looking away. I am done." She turned to Tae-hyun. "You framed your own brother. You entered that vault and let Grace Monroe take the blame." To Tae-jun, "You have been stealing from this company for 3 years, and you harassed a woman in the hallways of this house because she refused you." To the chairman, "You watched your eldest son commit fraud and said nothing. You stole from your own family through offshore accounts. And you said, in this house, in front of the woman who held this family together, she is just the help." She picked up the USB drive from the table. "Everything on this drive was documented by Grace Monroe, the maid, the woman none of you looked at. She saw everything. She knew everything. And she protected this family more than any of you ever did. More than I ever did." She set the USB down. "Her grandmother's name was Ruth Elizabeth Monroe. She cleaned houses for 30 years and nobody learned her last name. Grace cleaned this house for 3 years and nobody asked if her hands were healing. A 4-year-old child saw her. We did not. That is over." The chairman opened his mouth. "Do not speak," Mrs. Yoon said. "For the first time in 35 years, you are going to sit in a chair and listen to a woman talk. And you are going to understand what that feels like." The board of directors received the financial evidence by courier that same week. An independent investigation was opened within 48 hours. Forensic accountants were assigned to trace every offshore transaction. The journalist at the Korea Economic Daily published the offshore account story on Wednesday. Front page, Chairman Yoon's face beside column after column of routing numbers and shell company names. The story named no sources. It did not have to. The documents spoke for themselves. The family lawyer reviewed the original security footage, compared it frame by frame with the edited version presented at the Jade Seal meeting. His conclusion was formal, legal, and devastating. Yoon Tae-min had been framed. Grace Monroe's confession was coerced by circumstance and racial bias. She was innocent. The story moved through Seoul like a current. Business partners read the newspaper. Board members received the forensic report. The Korean community, the same community that had attended the charity gala where a woman told Grace, "You must be so grateful to work for the Yoons," read the headlines and connected the dots. The Yoon household, the maid, the black woman who served tea and cleaned floors and bled on marble while they whispered behind their wine glasses. The community that had said, "At least the Yoons give these people jobs," now sat with the knowledge of what those jobs had cost, what they had enabled with their silence, what they had blessed with their politeness. They did not speak about it at church that Sunday, but they thought about it. And the silence in the pews was different from the silence that had come before. It was the silence of people who were beginning to understand what they had looked away from. The doorbell rang on a Thursday evening. I dried my hands and walked to the front door. Through the screen, a man stood on Nana Ruth's porch. thinner than I remembered, tired in a way that sleep could not fix. He carried one bag. The man who grew up in a palace with 40 rooms was standing on my grandmother's porch with everything he owned in a single bag. Taemin. I opened the screen door just enough to see him clearly. I did not step aside. What do you want? To earn you. How? However you will let me. I looked at him standing there on the porch where Nana Ruth used to sit after 14-hour shifts, sipping sweet tea and telling me that someday a man would come who understood what it meant to see a woman. I thought about a window, his hand against the glass, my back walking through a gate. You want to start? I said. Learn my grandmother's name. He did not hesitate. Ruth Elizabeth Monroe. Something shifted in my chest. He remembered. From the cemetery when he was a lost man in a suit, too expensive for Birmingham, and I was a woman foolish enough to take him to my grandmother's grave. The community center needs volunteers, I said. 6 a.m. Do not be late. I closed the door. He did not knock again. He showed up at 6. Taemin walked into the Ruth Monroe Community Center, and I handed him a mop. The son of Chairman Yoon, heir to nothing now, holding a mop handle in a community center in Alabama. He did not say a word. He started mopping. He mopped floors. He washed dishes after every meal service. He served food to people in line who did not know his family name and would not have cared if they did. On the 4th day, he spilled a bucket of water across the dining room floor. He looked at the spreading puddle and then he got on his knees, both knees on the linoleum. He pulled the rag from the bucket and started scrubbing. I was standing in the doorway. He looked up, hands wet, sweat on his forehead, knees on the floor I had mopped 1,000 times. You did this every day, he said, in my family's house, while I sat in a chair, and I never once got on my knees for you. He scrubbed harder. His eyes stayed on mine. I did not help him up. He needed to finish this one alone, because this was not about water on a floor. This was about wine on marble and blood on porcelain, and a woman on her hands and knees in front of 30 guests while the man she loved gripped his glass and said nothing. He finished, wrung out the rag, stood up with wet patches on his knees and his hands red from scrubbing. I turned and walked back into the kitchen, but something inside me unlocked. A door I had bolted shut the night I told him through closed wood that my grandmother's man never came either. He came to my porch, and now he was on his knees. I called Boksoon that week. I am sending you a plane ticket, I said. Silence on the line. Then her voice, small and shaking. A ticket to where? Birmingham. The community center needs someone who knows how to feed people and how to love them while she does it. I need you, she cried. The woman who had been invisible for 20 years called Ajuma, and you there, and never once by her name until I asked, cried on the phone for 3 minutes straight. I will come, she said. She quit the palace the next day, walked out the front gate with a suitcase and 20 years of silence behind her. Her first time leaving Korea. She landed in Birmingham looking like a woman who had stepped off the edge of the world and found solid ground. I hired her that afternoon. Kim Bok-soon, head of kitchen services, Ruth Monroe Community Center. She read the title on her paperwork 3 times and pressed it against her chest. Bok-soon taught Taemin to cook. He burned rice. She smacked his hand with a wooden spoon. He burned it again. She smacked harder. By the 3rd week, he could make a pot of rice that did not taste like charcoal. And Bok-soon nodded once, which from her was the equivalent of a standing ovation. Taemin learned every visitor's name. When someone walked through the door, he asked their name and remembered it. Said it back to them the next time they came, because I told him once, in this building, everyone has a name. That is the first thing they took from my grandmother and the last thing I will ever let anyone take again. Weeks passed. The dogwoods bloomed and dropped their petals, and the Alabama heat pressed in through the windows. Taemin worked, not for the Yoon Corporation, not for his father's approval, for $7.25 an hour, sweeping floors and serving meals to people who called him by his first name. First earned money of his life. He bought a ring with that money. Not Yoon money, his. That night, I went to the closet in the back bedroom. My maid uniform from the Yoon Palace still hung there. I had kept it, not because I wanted to remember, because I was not finished with it yet. I carried it to the backyard, laid it on the fire pit. I held Nana Ruth's photograph in both hands, the one from 1972, her standing in front of the Harrington house, chin up, eyes steady, hands clasped the way women clasp their hands when they are holding themselves together. I lit the match. The uniform caught slowly. The polyester curled and blackened, and the smoke rose into the Birmingham sky. "We are done with this, Nana," I whispered. "We are done." He proposed on a Tuesday in Nana Ruth's kitchen, not a restaurant, not a rooftop, in the kitchen where my grandmother taught me to make biscuits and where I learned that love is what you do every morning when nobody is watching. Thai men knelt on the floor. Nana Ruth mopped for other people her entire life. He held a small ring between his fingers, simple, silver, bought with money from washing dishes and serving meals. "I will not make you invisible again," he said. "I will not sit while you kneel. I will not look away." I have you, Grace. I should have said it when it mattered. I am saying it now, and I will say it every day until you believe me. I looked at him, on his knees, in my grandmother's kitchen. "Say her name." "Ruth Elizabeth Monroe." Again. Ruth Elizabeth Monroe, and her granddaughter's name is Grace Monroe, and I do not deserve either of them, but I am asking anyway. My eyes filled, not with sadness, with something I did not have a name for, the feeling of a door opening that you thought was sealed shut forever, the feeling of a man on his knees in the right kitchen, for the right reason, saying the right name. "Yes," I said. He slid the ring onto my finger, and then he stood and pulled me close, and I let him hold me in the kitchen where Nana Ruth once told me, "Baby, love is not a word. Love is a man who shows up and does the work." He showed up. He did the work. The wedding was at the Ruth Monroe Community Center. I wore Nana Ruth's church dress, the white one with the lace collar she wore to Sunday service for 30 years, not the uniform she wore to the Harrington's house, the dress she wore when she was herself, when she sang hymns and was Ruth Elizabeth Monroe, not the help. Boksoon arrived early. She was wearing a name tag pinned to her dress, hand-printed in careful letters. "Kim Boksoon," she insisted. 20 years nobody used my name. Today everyone will know it. Mrs. Yoon came. She flew from Seoul, alone. She walked into the community center and stood in the doorway, looking at the folding chairs and the paper streamers in the kitchen where Boksoon was cooking. "Can you teach me to be useful?" she asked me. Her voice was quiet, and for the first time it was not cold. It was uncertain. I have never been useful, just decorative. I gave her a mop. She held it like a foreign object, turned it over in her hands. The woman who had walked past me bleeding on her marble floor now held a mop in a community center in Birmingham. She dipped it in the bucket and pushed it across the floor in uneven, awkward strokes. She learned. Minji brought Seo-yeon. They walked through the door, and the child saw me, and everything she had been holding inside for months broke open. She ran. Full sprint across the room, her small body hit mine, and her arms wrapped around my waist, and she did not let go. "Auntie Grace," she whispered, I found you." "You found me, baby." She was the flower girl. She held my hand through the entire ceremony, through the vows, through the ring, through the kiss. Her small fingers laced through mine, gripping tight, and she never let go. Not once. She had drawn a new picture. She gave it to me before the ceremony. Grace in a white dress. Tae Min beside her, tall and thin, and between them a little girl with a heart floating above her head. She drew herself into our family. Tae Min stood at the front of the room. He wore a simple suit he had bought with his own wages. In his jacket pocket, where he had carried them since the night he found them on a cold tile floor, were Nana Ruth's photograph and Seo-yeon's first drawing, the one with the boot print. His vow was one sentence: "I will never sit while you kneel. Not again." I kissed him in the room where my grandmother's legacy lived, in every wall and every name on the sign outside. Boksoon cried. Seo-yeon pulled on my hand and whispered, "Auntie Grace, are you happy now?" "Yes, baby. I am happy now." Years passed. The Ruth Monroe Community Center grew. We added a second building, then a third. A plaque hung beside the front door, bronze letters on dark wood, for every woman who was called the help and was actually the foundation. I trained domestic workers 3 days a week, legal rights, financial literacy, documentation, how to know your worth, how to walk out with everything they tried to hide. Taemin ran the intake desk. He still asked every person who walked through the door for their name. He still remembered everyone. Boksoon ran the kitchen like a general commanding an army. Her name tag never came off. She wore it every single day, pinned to whatever she had on, even her apron on cooking days. Kim Boksoon. She insisted Nana Ruth's ring sat on my daughter. She was 7 years old, brown skin and her father's dark eyes. She wore the ring on a chain around her neck because her fingers were too small, but she never took it off. On a Tuesday afternoon, a young Korean woman walked into the center, new to America. You could see it in the way she held her bag against her chest, the way she stood just inside the door like she was not sure she was allowed to be there. My daughter walked up to her, took her hand. "You need help? Come with me. My mama says when someone is invisible, you make sure they get seen." The woman looked down at the child, at the ring on the chain, at the center named for a woman who served for 30 years and never heard her own last name spoken with respect. She followed my daughter inside. The cycle breaks.